Welcome back to Undermine Season 4. I'm Tom Marshall, and I'll be your tour guide, your Phish tour guide, as we travel back in time to Destination 1.0. This season, we'll be revisiting 25 monumental shows from the 90s on Phish's road to the tour that changed everything. Well, and of course that is fall 1997. And when we arrive there, we're going to stop and look at every single show of that tour on that show's anniversary. And in that way, we can be your companion on this ride as we go all the way back and listen to those groundbreaking shows. My co-host for today, of course, is fellow Undermine executive producer and manager of Billy and the Kids, and also a New York Times bestselling author of the book Deal, Benji Eisen. Hi, Benji.
Hi, Tom. I am so glad that we're talking about the show that we are today. I've always kind of adored it. It is 4/21/92 from Eureka, California. And the venue itself has always had this certain mystique to it, to me. It's a fairground that is nestled in the redwoods of Humboldt County. And if you check out the venue's website, as I did last night, it's actually, these days at least, it's more of an RV park than it is a concert site. And most of the concerts that it has seems to be like these flag-waving, God-loving country acts. So imagine that if you can. I don't know if that was the case back then, but, it's this weird dork rock band from Vermont landing in the fairgrounds of the Emerald Triangle, a place where, weed was the number one commodity long before legalization. Was the crowd that night, was it a lot of pot smoking deadheads? I'd imagine, right? And I also think, some of the band's earliest tour heads, there are Bay Area fans that were stoked for the Northern exposure and a little road trip. But either way, whatever it was, it led for a truly wacky night of Phish. They let their freak flag fly that night, and the show is simply electrifying. It's from... Yeah, right. It's from April 92. So that is the month that it's earned the title amongst fans anyway as the first great month of Phish. I think, whether or not that's true, it's just that, every show that month was notable for something. And every show was also unique, just like the fall 97 tour that we're kind of working up to. But Eureka in particular, it's one of those shows that has a little bit of everything. It's got a Colonel Forbin's narration. It's got the big jams. It's got teases galore, fishy antics, including they do this banter that apologizes for their cover of Lively Up Yourself by explaining that they weren't trying to make fun of the song. And in doing so, they kind of devolve into this vocal jam that kind of makes fun of themselves, And also, I should say, for that song, the Bob Marley cover, it is, I think, the only known time that Mike Gordon was playing the vacuum cleaner solo while Fishman plays the bass. And then, of course, the show also has that tweezer. And I suspect that tweezer will be our focus today.
By the way, Mike plays the vacuum cleaner all the time, but just never in public.
Very interesting. There you go. So this was his first, his public debut of it, exactly. 4/21/92, and not again in public since that we know of.
Yes, exactly.
So I can't wait to talk about this tweezer. But first, as your co-host, Tom, I think it is my beloved duty to remind everyone to subscribe to Osiris Premium on Apple for ad-free podcasts, bonus episodes, and more. Okay, Tom, tell us why we're about to hear more about this tweezer.
Okay, well, I'm extremely excited. Today's special guest is very special, and yes, her name has been associated with the word tweezer in certain ways that we're going to go over, and that's also the case in today's episode. And as we dive into each of these shows, we're going to have a special guest who is either at the show or can otherwise shed some light on it, or have something to say about it in some particular way. Today's special guest, I'm delighted, is Holly Bowling. And we're so excited to talk to Holly again. I'm going to let her in from the waiting room in one moment. I had Holly on my podcast, Under the Scales, probably about 6 years ago now. And unlike almost every other interview I'd done, Holly came to my house and honored me by playing my piano. And it was probably the best that piano has ever sounded. And Holly at the time was touring as a solo pianist, supporting her then new project, Distillation of a Dream, which was the one that transcribed Phish jams into piano interpretations. And I also saw her live in Philly and I believe in New York doing that. And it was such a great tour and I loved it. The Tahoe Tweezer might be her best known jam transcription. And Holly continues to perform solo and with various projects, but is also a full-time member of Ghostlight, a great Philly-based band. And I'd like to say hi, Holly, and welcome back. How are you?
Hello.
Yay, there you are. How's it going?
Going good. How are you guys?
Oh, super. Where are you right now?
I'm home. Home in San Francisco.
Okay, West Coast. All right. Yeah, we got two West Coasters. I'm holding down the East Coast over here. So Holly, as I mentioned, your well-known cover of the Tahoe Tweezer came from that show in 2013. But you also transcribed, arranged, and performed the Tweezer from this show, 42192, as well. And I was wondering, when did you first hear it and why you chose to give another Tweezer that treatment, your special Holly Bowling treatment?
Actually, a friend of mine, Eric Gould, was telling me that I had to listen to this Tweezer and that I should really transcribe it. And people, right after I did the Tahoe Tweezer, people would tell me this all the time, whatever their favorite jam was, or, whatever Tweezer they heard most recently. Oh, you got to transcribe this. You got to do it. You got to do it. I was like, yeah, whatever. And I've never been, like, my favorite era of Phish was never like the early stuff, and so I kind of wrote him off and was like, that's not, it's never been my favorite. I still love it because it's Phish, but it's just never been my number one. And B, I was like, the like super dissonant tension and release stuff from the early eras doesn't really translate it as well to what I'm doing with it. Solo piano, like super dissonant stuff, just building and building it. Like it doesn't have the, it just doesn't translate as well. And he was like, no, dude, you got to listen to it. It's not what you would think out of 1992. It's totally different and you got to listen to it. And so I was like, all right. And I went and listened to it. And I think I texted him halfway through and was like, holy shit. Okay. You're right. You win. Yeah. And I'm totally going to do it. And it's so that's how I got there.
I agree with you. It comes from the April 92 where Phish is kind of making a transition from that old Phish that you're talking about. And I agree with you about it. It's not, it's really interesting to hear, but it's not the stuff that I want to be listening to when I'm, rocking out or whatever to Phish. But can you talk about, what made this Tweezer? This is when they're beginning to go type 2 and they're beginning to really experiment a lot. And I feel like this Tweezer kind of just nails it. Can you talk about, from a musical standpoint, what makes this Tweezer special? What do they do that's different than just I don't know if there's a standard Tweezer, but what do they do from the template?
I mean, I think there's not a standard Tweezer, and that's what makes it so good, at least for me. But one thing that I absolutely love about Phish is all the different thematic ideas and themes that are built throughout the course of a jam. And sometimes that's one thing that'll be taken on a huge arc for 10 minutes and taken to its logical conclusion. And other times it's a bunch of different thematic ideas that are, briefly developed and then it'll flip to a new one and that one's briefly developed and maybe we'll revisit the first one, or maybe it'll be like, walking through each of these scenes in a film one by one and each one of them is new. And this one is like that on steroids. It's all these different musical ideas that are thrown out there and, either Michael introduced it and Trey will latch on or vice versa. And they just, it goes from like super dissonant to like, very, and very minor to like super blissed out, beautiful, major glory. And it's just, I think part of what makes that so cool too, is it's still sandwiched between the super dissonant tension and releasey stuff from the early era of Phish. And so, the major stuff coming out of that just is that much more powerful and kind of unexpected, So.
Absolutely. Holly, maybe to catch people up a little bit, because we started right in without giving you a chance to say kind of what you're up to. Are you in the middle of a tour right now, or what are you doing? Like the next time you get in front of people, where would that be and what will you be doing?
I am not in the middle of a tour right now. I just got home from some shows in Colorado, and Ghostlight is going out on tour in a couple of weeks. We have a new album coming out in October, and we're doing a few weeks out in the Midwest and in the Northeast. So I'm enjoying a little time at home before we head out for that.
Oh, perfect. We definitely covered it when I talked to you before, but to bring people up to speed about what we're talking about here in case they haven't heard you, and I encourage you guys to go check out Holly Bowling after this. But back in your solo piano days, when you covered a song, it's much more involved than what most bands think of when you're talking about covering a song, because you like break it into components, and you gave each component a name, and then you spend hours and hours deconstructing it, figuring out what all the instruments are doing, and then somehow reconstructing it just for piano. And it was fascinating. Fascinating.
It's a bit of a different animal than, if you're covering a song by a 4-piece band, and you are a 4-piece band, you're it's a different thing. I'm coming at it with those arrangements with sort of a super nerdy classical background, and the original idea was to take the idea of way back in the day, someone might take a piece of music that was originally written for a symphony orchestra and arrange it for a trio or for a single instrument or something like that. And I wanted to do that, but with the music that is near and dear to me, which rather than being a symphonic thing was Phish. And so I write out each of the parts on manuscript paper and get really meticulous with it. And then, obviously I can't play all the notes that everyone's playing, nor would it sound good to do that on a single instrument. And I'm also not going for perfect recreation. I think it's a balance between being true to what was done and using the source material, like having all of the very meticulous, accurate information there to draw from, but then trying to figure out what is actually being said by all of these notes and rhythms right here, and which elements should I pull out, and how can I weave them together to turn it into something cohesive that still has that same arc and drives to the same peak as the original piece of music that I fell in love with. So that's been the approach. And then, the other thing for me is over time, when I first started doing the jam transcriptions of like the Tahoe Tweezer and the Chicago Wedge and this Tweezer from '92 in Arcata, I was really focusing on recreating these jams reframing them on piano. And then I've, over time sort of shifted my focus into still arranging songs, but then using them as springboards for my own improvisation at the piano and a lot of like weird extended techniques inside my instrument and just like playing with a whole different palette of sounds in there. So it's cool. It's I think at the beginning I kind of used the improvisation by my favorite band as like the source material to get really, really deep into the nitty gritty of what was going on there. And then that kind of informed how I wanted to improvise on my own instrument in a different way. So it's kind of full circle in a weird way.
It's just incredible. It's incredible what you do. It's incredible that you can do that with a tweezer, because it's always like sometimes when you listen to Phish, it sounds so much bigger than just 4 guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're able to do that with just one, and it's absolutely amazing what you do. And I also love how in the process you really get to dissect what they're doing in a particular jam. So, and you really get into the DNA of the jam. So by doing that, do you think that are there any other tweezers? I mean, one of the things that I love about Phish jams that are like historic, like this one that we can go back to all the way in 1992 and re-listen, is that there's an evolution. And sometimes they revisit themes, and sometimes they revisit things like you said, doing this major bliss in between, dissonance and things like that. Are there any other tweezers that you can think of that musically kind of reference or overlap with the improvisational themes that are found in this one? Or, can you find stuff from this Tweezer in '92 in other Phish?
That's a super interesting question.
Dorky question.
I'm not going to pretend like I'm like, Tweezer only and have listened to, all Tweezers all the time to try to pick them apart like that.
I just mean, like, are there themes and do you hear echoes of this Tweezer elsewhere in Phish?
I don't feel like, as far as the like musical themes, like the actual motives that are in here. But I guess I would look at it more in the big picture way of like these like shifts in color and emotion from dissonant and chaos to like super sweet major bliss to some of the really dark minor key stuff. It feels to me like this is at like a hinge point from the super chaotic, raw, manic, dissonant tension and release stuff, and then like looking down the line to these like take the Tahoe Tweezer if you want to take my favorite here. That one has a bunch of different thematic areas too, but they're much more fully developed and they're much longer. So here there's like probably just as many ideas thrown out, but they're just like fast and furious. They're in it for like 16 bars or 32 bars. And then someone has something else that goes out there and the whole thing turns on its heels and goes in another direction. Whereas, fast forward 20 years and you're looking at, I guess each one of those thematic ideas, same kind of deal, maybe the same amount of musical themes thrown out there, but they're just exploded. Each one just blossoms into a much bigger thing before they finish up that arc and then move on to the new one. So I guess that's where I would look at the overlap, right? Is that this is sort of like almost portending the future, it's like it's like the little oracle, the little crystal ball of like, hey, future Phish is going to do this, but even bigger, it's like, because I also don't feel like it's not like after this one that this became the new jamming style right away, right? Like I feel like this is really like, it's a window into what's to come, kind of.
It's incredible in that it's a window into what's to come, and at the same time, as you just said, it's also very unique.
Yeah, I can't think of another one like this. And I still laugh about how hard I wrote this off at first when it was suggested to me. I had to eat my words.
That actually is a good setup for my next question. So you mentioned that a gentleman had given you this idea and you didn't really listen much to this era of Phish. Are you familiar eventually? Did you go back and listen to this whole show, or are you really only just familiar with that song? Because we chose these these particular shows as we're leading up to 1997 for either they're like super high quality or something amazing happened. This one is kind of like both of that. It's like a taper favorite.
Yeah, I had heard it, and I listened to the whole thing when he suggested it to me, but it's not one of those shows that I know cover to cover by heart. I went back and listened last night and just to, kind of give myself context of what happened before and after the Tweezer. But the thing that I listened to on repeat was definitely the Tweezer over and over again. And for the record, I'm not like anti early Phish, right? Like I find it so insane, like, and so the energy is so manic and so dissonant that like, I love to listen to it if I'm like driving down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, but if I'm like having a conversation with someone, like the music,
not so much.
It's having a conversation with you at the same time. It's like, okay, we gotta, like, nothing else can be happening for me to be into that era of Phish. And then the other hang up for me is like, I just really love listening to the stuff. Once Page got a piano. The whole sound changes for me. But not writing off the era by any means.
No, but I mean, I think also for me and for a lot of people I know, it's we've heard that era a lot, but then it's like listening to what the newer eras are just because they're new. And that's the thing about Phish that's so incredible, is how they just continue to evolve and change and keep us interested. At the same time, a Tweezer like this, because it is so famed and so iconic, when you played it live, I'm curious, like you performed it live a few times. When you do you know if there's anyone in the crowd that just like recognized it as, oh, that's the 192, or did you announce it beforehand, or did you wait till afterwards?
I don't think I ever announced it. I'm trying to think. It's been a long time since I played it, but yeah. And honestly, when I'm playing, I'm so in my own world. Like I'm very like walking a tightrope. That level of focus to try to to try to pull these things off technically. In particular the jam transcriptions. It's like very, but I've written some challenging arrangements for myself, made my life difficult here. So I don't usually notice anyone's reaction at the moment, but it is cool, after a show to have like one or two people that are like, I know exactly what that was. And I knew from the third note and like, holy shit, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm sure there were awesome. A few other people out there that were like, what is going on? But, some people definitely are like, yes.
I remember, go ahead, Benji.
I was just going to say, it also must be hilarious to hear people, especially if someone new comes to one of your shows, to hear someone yell out like 421.92.
Yeah, dude, it's really funny. I was, there was a point in time where I was doing these, I was calling them jam teases. So it wasn't a full jam transcription, but I just take like whatever the like recognizable moment is from a jam that I really loved, or like, a really cool point that's like the hinge where it goes into something cool or whatever, something that's recognizable. But half the time it's like 15 minutes into a song, like there's the Camden Sand, I think it's 99. It's got like a super cool theme in it. Anyways, I'd work one of those jam teases into the middle of something else completely different in a show, and people would recognize it, and that just to me was such a testament to what Phish has achieved, right? Like, tell me another band where you can play a 30-second snippet of a particular version of a song that's been played hundreds and hundreds of times and stick it in the middle of something else on a piano, like not even a recording of the thing, but like a piano arrangement of it. And a bunch of people in the room will be like, oh my God, I know exactly what that is and I love it. Like, I don't know. It's cool.
It's outrageous.
Well, we've got to take a quick break, but if everyone listening sticks around, Holly Bowling will still be here when we come back, we hope.
Have you ever wondered what it would feel like if your investments reflected what matters most to you? At Green Future Wealth Management, the advisors specialize in helping clients manifest their values in their financial lives. Green Future Wealth Management was founded by certified financial planner practitioner and longtime fan Nick Cantrell, named by Forbes as one of the top next-gen wealth advisors in the country. Whether you are just getting started or have complex investing and financial planning needs, visit them on the web at greenfuturewealth.com. You can sign up for the email list or take the Investing Values quiz. When you feel ready, schedule a free virtual consultation. In appreciation for the amazing Phish community and the incredible work being done by fans across the country, Green Future Wealth Management will be donating 10% of asset management proceeds from new Osiris listener clients to Fans for Racial Equity. Just be sure to mention Osiris when booking your appointment. Create your green future. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Inc., member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Inc. Cambridge and Green Future Wealth are not affiliated.
And as promised, we are back. I'm Tom Marshall, and I'm here with my co-host for today's episode, Benji Eisen, and our very special guest, the talented Holly Bowling. Holly, thanks again for sticking around. And I wanted to continue a question that Benji asked before we went to break. And it was something that he reminded me of. And it's kind of something that happens like a tension almost with the audience. You say that you get into your own world. And I went to a Steve Earle show, and he's famous for talking a lot, but he didn't for like 3 songs. And he was kind of like looking down. I think he was like preoccupied with maybe his guitar wasn't working right or something. And he finally said, well, now I'm going to talk because I've found that if I don't talk in 3 songs, there's this uncrossable chasm that develops between me and the audience, and I could never get across it. And he said, I have to break it right now. And and I was thinking of this thing that you had said, which was sometimes you get like the audience gets quiet, and of course they're listening to you and they're concentrating and you're working. And then I remember like you said that all of a sudden in the middle of Squirming Coil, the audience starts, their only part where they participate is they all yell like almost randomly for the people that are working at the venue. Little Jimmy's off to camp
every time.
That must be so trippy for the workers there.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I think about that at Phish shows too, right? Like people that are, working the show and don't know anything about Phish and all the like, insider
we
jokes
that go on.
Yeah, they've just got to be like, what the hell?
They definitely don't love to take a bath,
Yeah.
Well, so we're talking today about the 421 Eureka, California show. And if I remember correctly, you first started seeing the band actually in 2.0, right?
Yeah, my first show was New Year's 2002.
And I was just wondering, with all the stuff that you're doing professionally now, if you're continue to actively see Phish live.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying to see Phish again. I haven't seen Phish since the pandemic started, and my husband has gotten the pet. We had a kid during the pandemic, so it's been kind of a like trading off who gets to go. So he's seen a few shows. I have not, and I am dying to go. I almost made it to Dick's, and yeah, so I'll be back. It's a phase. It's I'm spending a lot of time on the road, and want to balance that with actually being home to see my baby. But
you have a super youngster. How old? And congratulations.
Thank you. He's 18 months.
Oh, cool.
So I think he's old enough now. I think next time I go, I'm going to bring him with me, and we'll just have a big old party together.
and of course, you have a baby grand for the baby.
I actually have a full-size grand in my living room. My very small San Francisco living room. The piano takes up the entire space. It is awesome.
Well, Holly, I know that you do, you continue to play solo shows, as well as I know the Ghost Slate obviously, has a full schedule coming up, and you also do a number of other projects. But do you think for your own solo shows that you'll ever play this Eureka Tweezer again?
I don't know. It's funny. I've like kind of moved away from the jam transcriptions, but now you're kind of making me like, like I listened to it last night, right? I'm like, oh man, I do want to go play this again. So I don't know. I'm doing my first run of like proper solo shows, evening with, not opening slots, in November, December on the East Coast. So I actually have some set lists to write there. So maybe this will make an appearance.
Awesome. Well, Holly, Benji, anything else for Holly? I think we've hit our.
I think we hit everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and for the audience, remember to review and subscribe wherever you listen or watch, and that is only if you like us, of course. And if you don't, save it for Fantasy Tour. On the next episode, we'll be stopping by the woods of Vermont on a snowy evening. In 1992, and the band's guest that night was Carlos Santana. Almost as cool, our guest for the show will be one-time Phish employee Shelley Culbertson. We'll see you then, and in the meantime, don't do too much that we wouldn't do. And thank you so much, Holly, for coming.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Really fun. Great to see you again.
Great to see you too.
See you out on the road.
I hope so.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Osiris.